All right, everybody, who is ready for a brand new DC update? And there's a lot of mud being slung all over the place in regards to the DCU and the DCEU. And I want to address something from my last video. I had talked a little bit about, our movie news and the whole controversy with, Nathan Fillion possibly making comments out of context. And I still believe those comments were not made out of context. I think this was done. And I do have more stuff to show you today that I do believe this whole DCU was planned out as far back as 2019, as a matter of fact. And so I don't think it's a big surprise as to anything that's happening right now. And I do think they're following based, off of a plan from the previous regime. And, some people were talking in my comments about, Zack Snyder and James Gunn being friends. Yeah, it's true. They're friends. They've worked on movies together. That is perfectly fine. And they took offense to me saying that Zack Snyder did not say he was, quote, excited to see Superman, because he really didn't. And, if they were really good friends, I'm going to point out a couple things. If they were really good friends, I think James Gunn would have never taken that job and stepped aside, or at least made room for Zack Snyder to finish his story. He is the head of DC now. He is the head of DC Studios. So they could have made room for that to happen. But instead, James Gunn shut the door on anything DCU related when he came in and made changes to those final films. Quote, because he didn't want things to promise the audience, things that were not going to happen. And that's from James Gunn himself. And so, hey, that's fine. Those guys are friends. But you know what? I'm not James Gunn's friend. I'm not Warner Brothers' friend. I'm a consumer. And I know what I like. And I like what Zack Snyder did. I like what Patty Jenkins did. I like what David Ayer did, and would like to see David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad. I really enjoyed the DCU all the way up through Shazam. And so, I'm able to have my feelings on this. We all have our feelings on it. And no one person is above anybody else, but this is my channel. And I am going to give you my commentary on what's happening, and I don't see anything positive coming out of Warner Brothers. I really don't. Now, if Superman ends up being great, I will definitely talk about it. But we haven't seen anything. We haven't even seen a costume yet. We haven't seen anything in regards to this movie. So for people to have blind faith that it's going to be good, I think that's far-sighted or short-sighted. I really don't think that is. I don't think there's anything to back up that claim. But let's take a look at a couple of things here. All right, so this is a quote from David Zaslav. And it says, what we try to do is get really great leadership. The philosophy of our company is we don't want people to go to meetings. We want the people to do the work. He continued, so when I was meeting with James Gunn and he was writing Superman and he had written Guardians of the Galaxy, which is now a big hit for Marvel, which we're happy about because James Gunn wrote that movie and directed that movie. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, why isn't this guy running DC? Now, I no longer believe this quote. I don't. Because they were looking at James Gunn long before that. Hamada was looking at James Gunn. They were looking at him doing more. So for Zaslav to come in and act like all of a sudden he made this great discovery just is simply not true. And it goes on to say that Zaslav went on to talk about how Gunn has been close to these characters his entire life. They are his family, and after reading his Superman, Zaslav saw his potential and wanted to work with him. Yeah, and Zaslav was the same guy that said The Flash was like the greatest superhero film he'd ever seen. That doesn't give me a lot of faith, guys. It really doesn't. But these are those quotes. Now, this is something that I think is pretty cool. I will definitely be picking this up. I have the old DVD set that I had just backed up because Warner Brothers actually had a lot of disc rot. There's this whole controversy. If you look up on YouTube and you guys do a search for Warner Brothers, Warner Brothers DVD disc rot, you're going to see several videos where people talk about hundreds of titles that came out of a certain warehouse that were going bad. And this was one of the series, I believe, that was on there, and I backed it up, and all of my discs luckily did work. But now that this is coming out on Blu-ray, I will definitely be picking this up. And if you see, it's going to have a new 2024 1080p HD master from 4K, which, again, why aren't they releasing this on 4K? If it's an HD master from 4K, why not just come out with a 4K copy? You know, everything's past Blu-ray now. I mean, Blu-ray is much more well adopted, but I would prefer to get it on the newest format available so it'll last even longer. But Blu-ray is still good. I'll be happy to get this. And so The Flash, the original series, the whole series, will be coming out from Warner Archive Collection, actually June 14th of this year, so just in a few months. Now, this is some pretty crazy stuff, and this actually explains a lot as to why someone like Zack Snyder was thrown to the side and why someone like James Gunn is running DC, and I'll explain. It says a rep for movie directors reveals that Rotten Tomato scores of a director's past movies are now the first thing producers look at when directors are pitched to them. All right, and this comes from the Hollywood Reporter. Now, I got to tell you, there's all kinds of issues with this. First of all, it was proven this last year that not only has Rotten Tomatoes themselves skewed some of these numbers, but they also had paid reporters change or, not vote, but rate something a certain way because they were paid to. This was proven this last year. And we don't know how far that goes and how deep it goes and how severe it is, but we can only guess based on certain things. Now, what's crazy about this is when Zack Snyder was over there at DC, all of his movies, like Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, these movies did extremely well. And they didn't have the highest Rotten Tomato scores, but they made a boatload of money, and a lot of people went to the theater to see them. That's when the interest was at its highest. What didn't do well was James Gunn's Suicide Squad. Now, people keep saying it was in a pandemic, and you cannot use that excuse anymore. Because this movie, first of all, there were other movies that came out at the exact same time that did much better. And people had two ways to watch the Suicide Squad when it came out. They could watch it on HBO Max, and the numbers were pitiful. Or they could go to the movies. They didn't choose to do either. But because critics liked the movie so much, that's their reasoning behind having someone like James Gunn run a studio like DC Studios. What an asinine way to run a business and to figure something out just because of, you have to look at what they're actually producing. And it doesn't matter what critics like and what critics don't like. What matters is the box office and how popular it is at the box office. And this is some real backwards thinking, guys. And people wonder why Hollywood is having issues and these movie studios are having issues. It's because of this right here. This is crazy. All right, so this is more information on Peacemaker, and I do not know if this is true or not, but it says, breaking, John Cena has been rumored to be on set of Superman. No word if he's making post-credit sequence as Peacemaker. James Gunn is filming Peacemaker Season 2 for Max, premiering in 2025. Filming for Superman goes into August. David Corenswet is weighing more, and the suit has had to be adjusted, and they're doing a lot of practical stunts and fight sequences with a lot of high wires. Brainiac was rumored to be set up as the villain of the second film and tying into Supergirl film coming in 2025 as well. DCU is just starting. Now, who knows how much of this is true? It's going to be interesting. I'm really hoping the special effects for Superman are really well done. This movie is going to need to hit on all cylinders if it is going to be successful. I think having John Cena anywhere near Superman is one of the worst mistakes they can make, but we'll see what happens. Now, this goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning of this video about how far back these stories go, and there's more than one story like this, and I've seen them out there. And it says Warner Brothers is reportedly eyeing a 26-year-old to replace Henry Cavill as Superman. If the rumors are true, David Corenswet is first in line to become the new Man of Steel. This was published back on December 2nd of 2019, long before any of this stuff went down. And this was before the pandemic as well. And so this is some pretty crazy stuff. And now that he has, there was also talks of the girl playing Lois Lane as well. So this is kind of weird that all these things that were being talked about and reported on 6 years ago, 5 years ago, are now true. It is like they are doing the old plan that they had. And on that note, it's also important to note that James Gunn did come out and publicly say that he's going to be directing and writing a lot more projects for the DCU. Like, he is fully involved in this. So he's not really a CEO or co-CEO. He is a writer and director of a lot of the DCU stuff. It's the Gunn show. And you can't say it's anything but. The good news in all of that is if it flops, it's going to be on his shoulders and nobody else's. All right, guys, so there you have it. Certain things are happening behind the scenes. I think it's about time now for Warner Brothers to reveal the suit for Superman. They've gotten quite a bit, filmed at this stage, and they're working on special effects and other stuff. They're trying to apparently polish it up and make it look as good as possible. And if that's the case, they could start putting out some promotional materials. You want to get people excited, and we don't want to have to wait an entire year before we see something. And the longer they go, it's just not good. Everyone wants to get used to what the suit is and get familiar with this before the movie actually comes out. It's not a good idea to be hiding it. It's just not. All right, guys, so there's my update for the day. I do appreciate the support. We will see you on the next video.